Hey, everybody. Welcome to the She Rocks Awards virtual red carpet. I'm Lindsay Parker, and today I'm honored to be chatting with, from a very special location, 2022 She Rocks Awards honoree, Carmen Vandenberg, who you know is the lead guitarist for Grammy-nominated alternative rock band Bones UK. You are not in the UK. You are in a special place in LA right now, aren't you, Carmen?
Yeah, I'm in a special room in a studio called Sunset Sound. And this room, multiple artists have recorded in here, including Prince and the piano. And yeah, the room
Wow.
was empty today, and I was just working nearby, and they let me use the room to do this.
Well, I mean, you're a She Rocks honoree. You should be able to do this interview from wherever you want. Congratulations on that, by the way. It's very cool, and very cool that I'm going to get to see you in person when the ceremony happens in Anaheim on June 2nd. Let's before I want to get more info on what you're doing that brought you to Sunset Sound, but I want to know where you were when you got the news that you were being honored by the She Rocks Awards.
Um, I can't remember exactly where I was. I think I got a message from my manager Jesse, and I just remember that feeling of like, what, why, how come, like what have I done, and just being really overwhelmed. And it's just like, it's such an incredible thing. When you're so busy doing what you do, you don't realize that other people might be noticing it too. So it's, I don't know, it's a beautiful moment.
It is a beautiful moment. I would imagine getting the Grammy nomination tipped you off that people were taking notice of what you do, though. You know, you this isn't the first time you've been up for an award. I think you've paused for a minute. Sorry about that. But
Sorry, you cut off for a sec. Oh,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So tell me what brought you to this you're at Sunset Sound because you say you were working nearby on something. What have you got going on?
I'm here just writing music and then sessioning, like kind of assisting producing and playing guitar on different sessions for different artists and writing songs for
Oh,
different artists and for myself. And just I've had the opportunity to have a little room here where I can just work. It's not one of the main rooms, but it's just a great opportunity, and I'm enjoying my time here. So it's
I wasn't aware that you wrote and worked with other people. Are you at liberty to drop any names?
great. Yeah, I think a lot of it's in progress. I've always kind of like written for other artists when I've been asked, or publishers or briefs, but then here it's just like artists that have been coming around. A guy called Drew Dempsey here has just been like, do you want to help this artist elaborate their songs and help them record them and stuff like that? So it's it's been a bunch of different little works or just creative interactions with different people, and I'm just doing a bunch of stuff which you will know very soon.
Watch this space. Well, speaking of collaborations and writing with people, I know that one of Bones UK's big breaks came. I got it was more than 5 years ago now. I guess it was 6 years ago, 2016, when a guitar great in his own right, Jeff Beck, asked you to co-write on his album Loud Hailer, and you actually performed with him on tour as well. I got to ask how that came about. It was relatively early in your career as well, from what I understand.
Yeah, Bones had just started off. We were figuring out how to do it, and we were in London, and Rosie and I think it was our fourth ever gig or something like that. And there was about 10 people, and Jeff and his wife came down. He loved the way we sounded, and then had this record that he'd recorded, and then didn't really uh, wasn't really sure about it, so he just wanted to do a whole brand new record with a whole different feel, have lyrics and stuff like that. And he asked us to do it with him. And the reason why he was at that show is because I'd met him at Roger Taylor's birthday party, whom I'd played for before, and
Ooh.
we kind of hit it off on blues. And I think, yeah, the band was such a new thing. I got excited and I invited him and never really expected him to turn up. And then he did, which was incredible. We went out for Indian dinner and he said, would you like to do this record with us? And Rosie and I were just like, definitely. We'd
What
love to.
was what was the experience like? I imagine, you learned quite a lot from, like I said, one of the guitar greats of all time.
The whole experience was a whirlwind. We wrote and recorded the whole thing in about 3 months at his house, drinking prosecco, and then he asked me to well, he asked us both to go on tour with him, but then I didn't realize that that implied that I'd be playing his whole set, so all the other songs. So I then had a couple of weeks to learn his whole back catalog
Oh
and
my
get
God.
ready for this tour. And Buddy Guy was supporting was another hero of mine, and it was a ridiculous experience. I mean, I didn't sleep for months just learning all the parts and wanting, to do a good job. But the whole experience was incredible. Having a mentor like Jeff and being able to be around him every day and listen to what he's playing and absorbing that and learning and just being in awe the whole time. It, it was incredible.
How did you feel? I imagine that some people would imagine that playing with someone like Jeff or with Roger Taylor, as you mentioned, that, these are, classic rock veterans, and that it's a bit of a old school boys club or whatever. And of course, I've interviewed lots of people from the She Rocks Awards, lots of honorees about their experiences, both good and bad, as women navigating the industry and trying to be taken seriously. And, I don't know if you've ever had experiences where you haven't been and someone mistook you for like a girlfriend of the band, or mansplained guitar technique or whatever to you. But how did you feel in terms of being a very young woman in that world? It sounds like it was a very respectful situation.
Well, in regards to both of those legends, like Roger and Jeff are just incredible human beings and treat women incredibly well. And Jeff has always wanted female musicians and to elevate them, to support them, to showcase them. I mean, it's something that he's always felt quite strongly about, and Roger as well. So as far as them, there's not a single bad word I'd be able to say. Other experiences in my life, of course, I mean, even just what you said of turning up to a venue and someone being like, just assuming that you're the girlfriend, already just assuming what you are, or if you're just there to do merch or help out, and then you're setting up your own stuff, and the misogyny comes through. It's come through numerous times where we're doing sound check and they're like, oh, it's just another girl band, and then after we perform, they come back with their tail between their legs, all apologetic, and loved the show and whatnot. But yeah, I've had a lot of that. It's what's important is to not let it bring you down and just persevere. And I think times are changing, but there's always that misogyny is always lingering about. And I think we just have to be stronger and teach men, or younger men, to not do that and not start like that. I think it's a lot of it goes down to education.
How would you say would be a way to educate younger men, or older men for that matter, but male musicians or men in the music business who might have those misogynistic attitudes or preconceptions?
I mean, I think first of all, it's from a young age, both women and little boys, they need to know that girls need to be taught that they can do exactly what boys can do. And unfortunately, in our society where we're brought up to, it's not just parents or school, we're brought up to think that we have to work harder in order to get the equal amount of rights. And I just think that's one of the things that needs to change. And it's parents teaching their little boys to treat, girls equally, and parents and teachers and whatnot to teach girls that they deserve to have the same equal opportunities. And unfortunately, we still have to be stronger, and I think it's going in the right direction. But also people need to be called out when they're being assholes. Sorry for my language.
Oh, totally fine. Do you have any good stories about times where you have called out an asshole or two?
I mean, yeah, I think when I was at uni, I used to get a lot of bullying because kids that had student loans or whatever music would come to the restaurants where I was working and make a mess on purpose so they could watch me pick it up and all of that. And then I started getting jobs like playing for Kate Nash when I was 18, 19.
Oh.
And then what the misogyny that you get then is, oh, well, you got the job because they needed a girl. So it kind of undermines your worth as an artist or a musician, because not only is it harder to get a job as a girl, then when you do start getting the work, then it's because you're a girl. So that's an insult in itself, but the other way around. And those occasions still happen sometimes. It's like men thinking that they can come on to you because they're helping you out, and then they feel like they own you. That's just something that needs to be changed. And movements like Me Too and empowering movements for women, such as She Rocks, are things that I think will help this and stop this from happening.
Absolutely. So there's definitely on the subject of not equal treatment for women in music or female celebrities in general. I definitely want to ask you about the song that was the lead track on your debut album, the first track on your debut album, the song Beautiful is Boring, because I do think a lot of women in the public eye, they're held to a different standard about how they're supposed to look. Ed Sheeran, no diss to Ed Sheeran, but he can show up in a, t-shirt and jeans. Beyonce's got to be wearing a gown, like women, especially if, on social media, especially if they're aging in the public eye, like they're supposed to, and I've talked about this with other people. It's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, that if you do dress down, some people will be like, why aren't you wearing makeup? Why aren't you wearing hair extensions? Why aren't you wearing heels? But if you dress up, people might not take you as seriously as if you were wearing the jeans and the t-shirt. So what is Beautiful? I'd love to talk more about the inspiration behind Beautiful is Boring, but how do you navigate that whole thing with image and presentation?
I think these are all topics that Rosie and I talked about a lot, and Rosie felt very strongly about it because of exactly what you said, of like this idealistic perfect image that women have to be or portray themselves at, and you can't be seen sloppy or this or that, or while men can. But if you put too much effort, then you're classified as that kind of woman, and there's never like an
high maintenance.
High maintenance, exactly. So I think the concept of Beautiful is Boring is it goes beyond the female thing as well. It's about being able to embrace your scars and embrace the differences that we each have, the unique little traits that make us different from one another, and that there is no stereotypical kind of ultimate beauty that we should all aspire to. That beauty is boring. That beauty isn't what real beauty is. And funny enough, the concepts of ideal beauty have changed throughout history. Women were seen as beautiful when they were around in the 18th century, 19th century, and then it became like skeleton figures. And this pressure put on top of women to conform to these norms is what it's really about. Or anybody, Rosie always says, it's like, if you've got scars, show them. It's part of who you are. It's what makes you unique, and that's what real beauty is.
Absolutely. So I'd love to go back to the beginning and find out how you first got into playing music, because I'm not sure at what time you picked up a guitar, but I think you were playing classical music well before that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I fell into music because a few different reasons. Both of my parents are not musically talented at all, very unmusical, but they love music. So there was a jukebox in our house. There was always music going on. And I fell in love with the blues. I started playing my dad's old vinyls. For some reason, I just couldn't stop listening to that from like the age of 6 or something like that. And in a school that I went to in London, because I moved around a lot as a kid, but I started with the violin at the age of 5. And then I remember, I've said this story so many times, but I remember watching the VHS cassette of Woodstock and seeing Hendrix and just pointing at it and being like, Dad, I want to do that. And then, like, I kept on doing this with the violin. So I'd kind of set my heart to that. But it was one of those unobtainable dreams. I didn't really have female role models or different things. And then I had the luck, life sometimes does that thing. And when I was 6 or 7, I met this kid in school. His name's Django Stewart, and his father is Dave Stewart. But I had no idea at that age who that was. And I went over for play dates, and there was just so many guitars lying about, and he put one in my hand. And I think from then on, it was just like, this is what I want to do.
And then you ended up playing with Dave many years later, right?
Yeah. I actually did. He kept in contact, again, somebody that supports women so much throughout their career. Like, I moved away by the age of 8. And throughout the years, kind of kept in contact with my parents through email way before we had email, or letters. And then, I asked him once for a bit of suggestion or help or direction in my career, and we started working again together. So wow. Yeah, I'm very lucky in that sense.
And you mentioned that early on in your career, before Bones UK, you played with Kate Nash, who I have interviewed before. I loved her documentary that came out maybe a year and a half ago or so.
Mhm.
And she's definitely been through the ringer of the music industry and has a lot of tales to tell. Well,
Mhm.
tell me about your experience working with her and what you may have learned from that from her and her experiences. I'm not sure at what point you guys worked together.
Oh my God, I had just moved from Italy to the UK to do my music degree at ACM, which is an Academy of Contemporary Music in Guildford. And 3 months in, I got the call for an audition. I went and did the audition with Kate, and I got the job. So I was fresh into, I was 18 or 19. And
Wow.
I learned so much from her. First of all, like what an incredibly strong woman she is, and the crazy stunts she would play on stage. And if she'd break her chair, which the show would go on, and her perseverance, and it was an incredible experience, an eye opening of like, a strong woman that was closer to my age, and I was actually working with. There's so many funny stories with Kate, but it was also the first time I ever came to LA was to do
Mm.
the record Girl Talk. So, and I wasn't 21 yet, so I always had to wait outside from the bars. I wasn't allowed in, which is kind of weird because in Europe it's maybe 14. But
Yeah, they're a little more lax over there.
yeah.
Did Kate Nash give you any advice about, like I said, I'm trying to figure out the timeline of when Girl Talk came out, but like I said, she's been through the ringer a lot with like I actually encourage people to see her documentary, but a shady manager,
Yeah.
some bad record label experiences, a lot of early hype on that kind of put a pressure on her. Did she give you, as you were starting off your career with Bones UK, any advice about how to, manage a career with those kind of things that can be thrown at you?
I think when we were doing it, she was in the midst of it as well.
Mhm.
And it was always like her advice was always just like, don't take shit from anybody, be strong, be yourself. And like giving that kind of confidence to all the girls that were in the band with her or all anybody that was in the audience. It was very much about that. And I took a lot of that from her.
What advice would you, paying it forward, that you would give to, young female musicians in general, but female musicians coming up in the biz, especially female ones who have, as we've made it clear, might some more obstacles.
I think to female and non-binary musicians, I think a lot, the main thing I would say is don't let anybody bring you down. Like, don't give a shit about what anybody has to say or what they think of you, or if they tell you you should look a certain way or what you're doing is wrong. It's like, no, be true to yourself and don't forget the reason why you're doing it. Like, do something, do music or art or anything because you love it. And, don't try and lose that because I feel like sometimes as musicians and artists, we all tend to second guess ourselves in our um, toughest critiques, and
Mhm.
a word from somebody else might really shake your world and bring you down. And I think sometimes it's okay to accept positive critique, even negative, but then also stay true to yourself and do everything because you love it.
Do you have any heartwarming stories of younger musicians who have reached out to you, have told you either, at a meet and greet or a show or social media, letters, emails, whatever, about how you and Bones UK have inspired them?
I mean, all the time when Rosie and I finish a show, if we can, and we don't have to write it off straight away, we go to the merch desk and meet the fans. And the amount of times that people have come up to us saying how the album has changed their life or made them feel more confident in themselves or comfortable within their own skin. Or the amount of times I get like a little kid coming up to me being like, I play guitar because of you. And it's overwhelming, it's beautiful, and it reinforces the reason why I love doing what I do, is to be able to inspire a younger generation or help someone that's a lot older than me and they needed to hear, those words that Rosie put so well about self-confidence and stuff like that. So I have numerous stories, but one of them was quite recently last summer I did girls rock camp. I went and taught one of those, and just seeing these little eyes shining and realizing that they can do it too. And, you know, just me telling them my story. And, you know, it's not always going to be easy, but if you really want it, anything can happen. Just the reward of seeing, I don't know, some little kid's eyes light up and seeing that they have possibilities too. That's worth every second.
So nice. You mentioned that when you were young, you didn't, around the time you met Django Stewart, you didn't have many female role models yourself. Were there any guitarists you looked to? And they don't necessarily have to be female. You've mentioned Jimi Hendrix, of course, but who were the people that you looked up to that made you think really like, I can do this?
I mean, I fell in love with the blues, so a lot of my heroes were Albert Collins, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Albert King, all of them, Stevie Ray Vaughan. There weren't really many female guitar role models. I didn't have access to knowing about them. Also before the internet and stuff, so I had whatever my parents had. Then as I was growing older and discovering things for myself, I find out about Jennifer Batten, you know, Orianthi and all of that, but that was a later discovery. And my female role models when I was younger were artists like Patti Smith, because I love poetry and writing, and Janice and Laurie Anderson. But there weren't really that many guitarists. And I remember, no, not that my dad did anything wrong, but at the time he's like, you really want to do this? Do you realize how many guitarists there are out there in the world that are men who still don't make it as just a guitarist? And I at the time didn't want to sing, so I remember him name one guitarist that's made it without being a frontman or a singer, and I just remember saying Santana, and he was just like, oh, touche. He's like,
good answer.
But yeah, but I was a kid, I was 8, and I didn't really have those role models, but I didn't care. I kind of just, I'm going to try, I'm going to do it. I don't think it's so funny that I was so stubborn and sure of myself back then. And now the older you grow, the more you develop certain insecurities. It's quite funny.
Really?
Sometimes,
I'm surprised that you, after all you've achieved, you know, and that you would have any insecurities left. Where does that come from?
I mean, the thing is, like, I might look really confident when I'm on stage or when I'm doing what I know I'm doing, but I think a lot of us artists deal with that. And whether it's nerves before a stage or, you know, am I worth it or this or that, it's always present. It doesn't mean you can't overcome it. And the more I'm venturing into doing other stuff or maybe singing myself, I question whether I could do it but I don't stop.
I was going to say, how do you quiet those voices so that you don't stop?
You don't quiet them, because that's pushing something under the rug. It's like you confront them and you push yourself to boundaries, and it might not be right at the first try. You know, it might not be right at the first attempt, but the thing is, like I was trying to say before, don't let anything get you down. Don't let your mind let you down as well. It's like there's the outside world and then there's the inside world that we can struggle with. But again, I love what I do, and I'll just keep on doing it because I can't see myself doing anything else.
Absolutely.
I don't really want to.
You shouldn't. You obviously picked the right career path, even if there might have been times in your life where you or people in your family or whatever doubted it. How do you keep pushing yourself to evolve as a musician? Is the, like, you know, as we started this interview, you're at Sunset Sound and you're in LA working with other people. Is that a way that you push yourself musically, by working with other people?
Yeah, I love working with other people. I definitely love working with other people. I love also spending time and practicing on my own. And sometimes it's also just good to get excited about somebody else's career. You know, I've met other female artists or guitarists that are incredible, and the excitement that I get for their career pushes me to want to do more with mine. And it's a beautiful thing that we can all inspire and influence and push each other.
Absolutely. So what's going on with the next the sophomore Bones UK album?
We're right in the middle of it. It's COVID hit us a little bit because we did the Grammy nom and then we had the Seth Meyers, and while we were in the building, the whole world went in lockdown. So I think we all had personal family issues and things to deal with in that time, figuring out what we wanted. And we're ready now. We're excited. We're writing a bunch of new stuff. We're recording. We're putting it all together. But, you know, we want it to be the best version of what we can be. And it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be a replica of what we were on the first album. We don't want to cover ourselves. So it's figuring that out. And we're at a good place now, you know. It just, things took a bit longer because of everything that happened.
Well, understandably, I think a lot of people have a similar story about delays. Explain to me, you were at Seth Meyers, like I guess performing, getting ready to perform, or having just performed when the shit hit the fan, so to speak. Like, what exactly happened?
Well, the funny thing is that we were scheduled to do it, and we kind of, COVID's like in the news and everything. And then while we were in the building, we were supposed to be the last performance with a live audience. While we're doing our makeup, the audience gets canceled. Then another thing happens. Then the whole building goes in lockdown. So we're like, oh, well, thank God there's plenty of snacks here. But we might just get locked in here. And then because we'd come all the way to New York and had everything set up, Seth decided to still film our performance, but then but it didn't air that night. He then did only a closer look, and it aired like 7 or 8 months later, actually on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
Funny enough, but it was like, yeah, and then we just had to pack up, go to the hotel, change our flights, and left early the next day.
Crazy. Did you write a lot during the pandemic? Did anything? I mean, obviously, it's kind of interesting because in 2019, you did I'm Afraid of Americans, the Bowie song. And like I was hearing that song so much in the last 2 years, in the sense that, you know, obviously it took on some different meaning. Interesting, you know, song for you to do as, you know, a British person who spends a lot of time in America. But was anything that was going on in the world in the last 2 years during the pandemic inspiring anything you were writing, that you guys were writing for this next album?
It has. We've gone through like a lot of different phases. A lot of it was influencing us at first. I mean, there's so many different things that have happened in these past couple of years, just like in a humanitarian level, just like noticing the cause and effects of what an epidemic, you know, can do, and the way people react to it. There was elements of extreme kindness, and then elements of, I mean, absolute arrogance and ignorance coming out, showcasing people's true selves. I mean, there was the riots, Rosie got arrested, I was at the protests every day. Like, there's a lot of things that took over our lives. We were caught in the middle, and a lot of it has come into the writing, but then a lot of it, you know, we've changed a lot through this time as well. So it's now figuring out what's really true to us. And I think we sat around with a lot of stuff for too long, so now we're just trying to do new and more new stuff and how we feel now.
Awesome. Well, obviously we're not totally out of the pandemic, you know, that would be premature to say that, but you know, we're coming on to the other side of it. And I'm very excited the She Rocks Awards will get to be in person this year, which they were not last year for the obvious reasons. So I'm excited to see you there. Will you be performing there?
Yes, I will. And I found out today my parents are coming all the way from Italy.
Amazing. That's going to be so cool. Will you have your Black Star amp there? I know you have a Black Star signature amp that I wanted to make sure I asked you about, because it's a pretty big deal that you got this amp. Tell me about that.
That was a whole journey in itself as well. Black Star approached me about, God, it might be 3 years now, that they wanted to do this with me, and I was like, are you sure you're talking about me? I couldn't believe it. They're like, yeah, we really think we could do this. And we spent a couple of years developing it, getting it right. So they created this amp that really can carry all the pedals and stuff that I use. And I would go to the headquarters and they would just plug a bunch of different things, and I would listen and say, I like that one, with this cable, with this tube. And the aesthetic of it was just us creating it together. And yeah, that was an incredible experience as well. And the fact that, you know, I've heard so many stories of girls out there or people that really enjoying it and how it's inspired them to play more, things like that. I think that's what really makes me happy.
Awesome. Well, I mean, it's very just, I know you keep saying you can't believe it, but I can believe it. It's obviously that honor is very deserved. The She Rocks Award you're getting is very deserved. And I'm very excited to see you June 2nd in person at the awards and your parents. It's
Yeah.
going to be very
Yeah.
adorable.
Well,
And
they've never come to visit me, so it's like the first time.
this is a good occasion to do it. So I'm looking forward to that. And I really, in the meantime, thank you for this chat. It's been great.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good time at Sunset Sound. All right. I think that is